Today we're going to talk about The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V.E. Schwab. Hi, this is Michelle from the channel Lost in the Pages. My channel focuses on talking about and reviewing the books that I'm reading. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing below. So the story, The Invisible Life of Addie Larue, is a really interesting story. It starts set in the 1700s, and this woman, she lives in this very small village, and she's on her way to she's gonna get married, and kind of forced to be married. And she is not really excited about the future. In fact, she is afraid of it and doesn't want to be trapped in this marriage that she doesn't want to be a part of. And as she is on her way to be married, she runs away into the woods and prays to any god that will listen. And the god that responds is the gods of the shadows, or the shadow god. And she makes a deal with him that she just wants freedom. And she gets her wish, but what ends up happening is, in place of her freedom, not a single person remembers her. And she lives her life like this for 300 plus years. The story goes back and forth between what happened right after that wish, or that deal that she made, into the year 2014 in New York City. And the story goes back and forth between the two timelines. Now what's interesting is, for the whole 300 years that she's lived with this curse, no one remembers her. She'll have an interaction with someone, she'll go to another room and come back and the person's forgotten her. Except for one day she meets a man who remembers her the next day. And it turns out he's also made a deal with the same devil. So the story kind of takes an unexpected twist and turn at that point. If you want to see what happens next, then you're going to have to read to find out. So overall, I really did like the story. The story was well written. It was a really interesting story, really interesting, I guess, style of writing. So I haven't really read a story with this premise or plot before, so I found that really interesting, and I found myself wanting to go back to read or to listen to it to see what happens next. Watching Addie learn how to live with this curse was really fascinating. It kind of made me think about how I, as a person, learn how to live with situations that happen that aren't really ideal, and it was fun to see how she overcame those things. So I really enjoyed that. Now for the things I didn't like, so just like I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not really a big fan of language, like bad language in writing, and this book unfortunately had quite a bit of that. I listened, like I mentioned, and read the book kind of simultaneously, and there was just a lot of language that I wasn't a big fan of. There's also kind of some mature sayings, just as a heads up. If you do listen to this book, you might not want to have little ears around, or at least listen with headphones on. That was not my favorite. I just tend to skip over those parts. Another thing that I wasn't necessarily a fan of, and it might just be my personal preference, but I didn't really care for the audio version of this book. Now, the person who read this story, I've listened to a lot of books that she's narrated, and I generally really enjoyed the books that she reads, but for some reason, the way she was interpreting the characters and how I interpreted the characters as I read was very different, and I had a hard time with that. She, in my mind, was just painting a darker person than I felt like Addie was and some of the other characters. So that wasn't my favorite. I think if I would do it differently, I'd go back and just read instead of listening to the audio version. So I guess in review, this is a book I feel like that a lot of people would enjoy. It's very well written, it's a page turner. It is a little bit long. I think it clocks in at just over 500 pages, so you kind of have to have some time to get through this book. I tend to listen to audiobooks at like 1.5 speed, just because I want it to go a little bit quicker, so I was able to finish it a little bit quicker than I think I would have been able to if I had just read it. But I think I would recommend this book to anyone who just wants to get, like I said before, get lost in a good book. And if you enjoy kind of like the mystical, like fantasy type stories, then I think you'd really enjoy this story. So if you've read this book, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.